Seahawks fans, wherever you may be, thanks for listening to the show. Join your hosts, Bill Alvstad and Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Hey, hi, Seahawks fans. Welcome back to another episode of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with co-host Keith Myers. We're here to talk Seahawks football. It's the beginning of free agency. We've had a few days of moves since the last time that we recorded, Keith. Not only just a few days of moves, but big moves, big changes, complete revamping of the offense is in store. And today we had our first move of free agency in getting the quarterback of the future, at least the near-term future. Sam Darnold becomes a Seahawk, signing a deal. We're going to talk about all of it. We're going to talk about the moves that they made prior to this to get to where we are today. So much to discuss, and we've got a time constraint on the show as well. So we're just going to go for it and start right in. Keith, hey, how you doing, man?
Doing good. Let's not call him the quarterback of the future. He's the quarterback of the now. His contract is a bridge. It's, one that'll give the Seahawks a couple of years to find a long-term solution while, they've got him. But ultimately, I was looking at his stats from last year and stuff. The Seahawks just replaced Geno Smith with white Geno Smith. Very, very similar players in a lot of ways. And so I don't think it's a downgrade, to roll with Darnold, but, we'll see how he plays. He did not finish the year well. His last two games, both week 18 and in the playoffs, were pretty bad after the previous 17 weeks were really good. So we'll, I don't know. We'll see what happens. It was a risk, but I think that given how much Geno was going to cost to keep and his crazy contract demands, this may end up working out better for Seattle overall.
Yeah, I mean, Sam Darnold's 7 years younger, and I agreed with everything you said. 7 years younger, $11 million and counting cheaper. We haven't seen Geno's restructure or extension yet with the Las Vegas Raiders. And they pivoted so quickly. Let's go back. So before we get completely into this conversation about Darnold, and I want to do that, let's go back and revisit how this moment in time today happened. So last week, the Seahawks made a number of different moves to kind of get under the cap. They released 4 players. We kind of predicted those: George Fant, Draymond Jones, Roy Robertson-Harris, Rashawn Jenkins. Those cuts saved the Seahawks a total of $27 million against the cap. But since we were underwater by about $7 million, it was really about $20 million. Then the team cut Tyler Lockett and saved $17 million there. The same day, it was leaked that DK Metcalf was seeking a trade. Essentially, the next day, it became, I guess, Geno Smith privately requested a trade. It wasn't disclosed, but that sort of clock started then for the team to find a partner there. I think that team was that trade was basically in place at the combine. If the Seahawks and Geno Smith and his agent weren't able to come to terms quickly, they were going to be able to pivot, and they did. Mm-hmm. It was really remarkable, Keith. So all of those moves got us into cap savings, but also completely transformed the team. So we moved on from Geno Smith. That trade was executed with the Raiders, reunited with Pete Carroll there in Las Vegas. Probably a win-win in general for both teams. Seahawks weren't willing, and rightly so, to go up to about $44 million a year APY, which is where Geno Smith wanted to be. I do not see that. and I would have been so upset if
he's just
Seattle
not that
would have,
if
Seattle would have doubled down
good
on that And if you take a look at the broader idea of this entire thing and why we're here, is that we were stuck in mediocrity. The Seahawks were a 9-10 win team and had no real path to improve upon that except for incrementally. And there were no guarantees in Clint Kubiak's new system and new scheme. He still needed to improve the offensive line. Then with the Geno trade and now with the Metcalf thing and letting go of Tyler Lockett, we need to not only, and Geno going, now we needed to improve the offensive line still and replace the number one quarterback on the roster and completely redo the wide receiver room. So it looked like a complete rebuild. I think these moves, though, give you an opportunity to do just a reset, because now Darnold comes in, like you said, it's kind of a lateral move for the Seahawks, but 7 years younger. They have a chance to look at him with this contract for themselves up close for the 2025 season, potentially into the 2026 season. And if he just completely performs like he did in Minnesota, then you can sign him again. He's young enough. He'd be 29 at the end of 2026. You just go ahead and re-sign him. But it also gives you an opportunity to walk away from that deal. If they draft a quarterback, they're ready for that succession to happen. They get younger, a draftable player, and they're ready to move on. And I think this was a bold move by John Schneider and company. It's like, we don't want to be mediocre. I think Mike McDonald said, especially with DK Metcalf and then Geno, hey, if you guys don't want to be here, which you said you want to be traded, you're out of here. You're gone. We want people that are going to want to be here. So I liked that in the respect that the team's just moving forward under the Mike McDonald leadership. And I like it because they kind of swung for the fence here. It's not the Darnold thing isn't a swing for the fence necessarily, but it's an upgrade in that it gets you younger. It's an equivalent performance on the field. The cap number is going to be about where Geno was before. Mm-hmm. And it gives you, and they got a third round pick for Geno. They got a second round pick for DK. They've got draft capital now to move around at virtually every level of the draft. They've got that money now.
92.
5 picks in the top 92. We're going to talk about all that too. But now they've got the free agency cap number to be able to pretty much make any move that they need to make. They did give a lot of that up front to Darnold, but we don't know the complete structure of that contract and how it's what the cap hit is in year one. We know that the outlay of money, dollars to Darnold was $37.5 million, but we don't know how that translates into the actual cap hit.
Yeah, if a lot of that was signing bonus, then it's spread out over the 3 years of the deal, and we'll see what that ends up looking like for the Seahawks. But in the end, you look at Geno. He came on when he became the starter. He looked really good, and then after about 10 weeks, he stopped looking really good and has looked above average. And if you look at his stats over the last 3 years, his 3 years as a starter in Seattle, he has gotten progressively worse in each one. This last year, 21 touchdowns, 15 interceptions. That isn't winning anything. And you go look at Sam Darnold's, right? 35 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. That is a much better 3-to-1 ratio. That is much better. His yards per attempt were.
I will say this, that the blocking for Minnesota was substantially better than Seattle. So Geno had those numbers under duress. I think when you take a look at Sam Darnold, the advanced stats say that when he is pressured, he was worse in those situations than Geno was. But he gives you a lot of upside with a lot of other advanced stats too. So I think it's a wash overall.
Well, okay. Take QBR then, which is meant to take the offensive line out of it. Geno Smith was the 21st rated quarterback in the entire league. That's below average. Sam Darnold was 14th. That's average. So if in that sense, if you take the offensive line out of it, Darnold had a better year. I'm not saying he's a better quarterback. I started this show by calling him the white Geno Smith. I think that really is who he is. It's about the same quality, a lot of the same attributes. I mean, he's a guy that is not an elite player, but he's not terrible. So
yeah, 5th in the league in passing yards, 5th in TD passes, 14th in QBR, 5 game-winning drives, which was tied for second most in the NFL. That 14-3 record, that's nothing to slouch about. You're right. The advanced stats, he had over 1,000 yards in deep passes, 20 plus yards, air yards. That was 150 yards more than any other quarterback. Statistically, if you looked at him and you compared him straight across from Patrick Mahomes had kind of a down year in Patrick Mahomes' world, but statistically, they were about the same quarterback throughout the entire season.
Which is crazy to say out loud.
Right. And my larger point is, and I know that, Mahomes is clutch and all that stuff, right? But that statistical year for a quarterback can get you to the Super Bowl. It can get you to the championship game, the AFC championship games. I think that Sam Darnold does have the ability to do that. I think if you pair him with Clint Kubiak and this structured system that is going to be put into place, along with taking some of the things off his plate as far as pre-snap reads and all that kind of stuff, I think this plays in perfectly to Sam Darnold's strengths and mitigates his weaknesses. And I don't believe that we're done, obviously, with improving our offensive line. I don't think we're done
improving our quarterback room.
Yeah, I agree.
Honestly.
I think this specific contract points to the idea that you're right. Sam Darnold's a bridge quarterback, and they're still going to be looking and hopefully drafting a quarterback in this draft. And I've said that a couple of times. You say that as well, and I totally agree with that. They could also not feel so much pressure to get one at 18 and take one in the second round and develop. And that can also be true. And then also that quarterback may end up being the backup quarterback behind Darnold. Darnold could sign a second contract and he could be our quarterback here for the next 5-6 years. All of those things can happen or be true. And you just kind of have to see what the performance is on the field. I mean, the nice thing is you've got that option now. Sam Darnold under contract for the Seahawks. And I think it's a really good move by John Schneider.
Yeah. I mean, you don't want to, okay. People are like, oh, why did we sign Darnold? He's not good enough. Who else out there is? The ghost of Aaron Rodgers? No, sorry. He was absolutely terrible last year. So having him sign would have been awful.
If it wouldn't have been Darnold, this could have been disastrous. I mean, really, moving on from Geno Smith was very much a calculated risk. It was a big risk. It really was, because if Darnold doesn't sign, and their camp probably knew that, and it's crazy how this developed so quickly, because Darnold was essentially going to be set to sign a 1-year low dollar deal again with Minnesota to stay there, or
it wasn't going to be low dollar.
It would be New York or some other place, and or even Pittsburgh, and it really just happened to fall into Seattle's lap in a sense.
Yep. All right. So on top of the Geno move, they also really kind of emptied out their wide receiver room with Lockett gone. We knew that his production had been dropping steadily over the last 3 years, and he was no longer the guy, production wise that he used to be. That cap number ballooned up crazy. This was like the most predictable thing ever. But then DK requested a trade. Now, when DK requested a trade, what I read was that he wanted to be traded to a contender, and he didn't think that Seattle was close. And I have to wonder if he knew that Geno was on the way out, because those negotiations don't just happen overnight. They take time. And if he's looking at the team and he already sees the offensive line's bad, and Seattle's offense was terrible last year. It really was one of the worst in the league for most of the year. And then you lose your quarterback. He's like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here without a quarterback. And so that's why he asked to be traded away. But he's
What do
gone.
you think of the quick reaction that this franchise took to take care of these moves so quickly right before free agency?
I think it was
still
smart.
Get good value.
I think it was smart to
return.
do it now, because right now everyone has all their assets. As soon as free agency starts and people start signing guys, the amount of cap space that they have goes down. Now suddenly, maybe the Raiders don't have enough to take on all $31 million owed to Geno for next year. That kind of stuff. Or maybe Pittsburgh signs a wide receiver and they think, you know what, we don't have to give up such a high pick to get him. We're much more comfortable with how we are now. So I think it was smart to get it done before free agency started and just maximize value for both guys.
I agree. So in addition to those, and we can spend more time talking about Tyler, and there's an opportunity too for Tyler to come back at a smaller number. That cost cutting move saved Seattle $17 million against the cap. They traded Geno. That saved $31 million against the cap with $13.5 million in dead money. That was a huge move to be able to let all of that money go along with Geno.
To have it go from a $44 million cap number for your quarterback, and just, now they've got $31 million in cap space, and got the dead money off the books this year, so that way it's not going to get spread out. Like, it's going to work. And a third round pick.
Yeah, that's a good move. I mean, that's the best you can do under those circumstances. From what I understand, that trade went down really quick. I mean, from the time that they knew that Geno came in, and Seattle put down its cards and said essentially they wanted to do a $31 to $35 million deal. Geno's camp came in and said, we want to do a $40 to $45 million deal. They were $10 million apart. They didn't even counter. So Seattle didn't counter. They just went to a trade. Like they went straight there, and that's pretty ballsy considering you don't have a succession plan in place when you do that.
Apparently Pete Carroll had approached John Snyder at the combine and was basically like, hey, if things go south, we'll take him. He's like, I need a quarterback. And their relationship's still really strong. And so when things weren't there, they just reached out to the Raiders and were like, is this still a thing? And they worked it out. Boom, got him off the roster. But you're right. It was a bold move because without the succession plan, but there also wasn't a great path forward with Geno at $44 million.
They just ripped that Band-Aid off.
That's going to be untenable as far as actually keeping the rest of your roster around and being able to create a winner. So they were like, you know what? That is not a path towards winning. So we're not going to take that path. And so you're right. Not having a succession plan is dangerous, but I don't know. I just think you can't, if you're not, that other path isn't a path towards winning, why would you take it? Just because it might be better. In
addition to having the trade path with the Las Vegas Raiders and Pete Carroll in place, I think at the combine, Seattle itself probably had a backup plan in place to pivot to Sam Darnold should they do this, because that happened very quick as well. And Sam Darnold's market was kind of figured out and it wasn't really great. And then all of a sudden this trade happened and boom, Sam Darnold's now the highest coveted quarterback in the free agent market. And everyone just basically said, Seattle's a done deal. Now, even though everyone said it was a done deal, you're still nervous as heck as a GM that
Until
somebody else could come in and swoop in and do it. Or he could change his mind or whatever. I mean, anything can happen in these deals. So hats off to getting that deal done. Let's talk about the DK Metcalf deal for a second. DK Metcalf comes in. I thought, well, he's going to, play on his deal. They might restructure. It sounds more like something that would happen in the deep off season, like it does sometimes. These extensions happen, closer to training camp. And I think that was the plan heading into this situation with DK. But DK comes in, says, I want to be traded, doesn't like the landscape. He sees, okay, Seattle says, fine, we'll do that. And they just go out and very quickly, like within 48 hours or less, find a trading partner with Pittsburgh and get a 52nd overall pick and generate almost $11 million in cap savings with its $21 million in dead money. But he's off the books. They took that charge in 2025 instead of spreading that out over a couple of years. And now he's gone. And at least we got the compensation. It's not the first round pick or the first and the third that everyone thought. I didn't think that was necessarily completely realistic. I think that was hopeful. But what do you think about that situation and the return that we got for him?
I think that he was asking, look at the contract he signed with Pittsburgh, right? $30 million a year for 5 years. I mean, that's just under quarterback money. That's one of the highest paid wide receiver contracts in NFL history.
5 years, $150 million.
Yeah, that's a crazy contract. And if that's what he showed up with asking for it with Seattle, Schneider's like, yeah, we're not doing that. And yeah, I mean, then he says he wants traded. Okay, fine, you're gone. I'm disappointed in the compensation. I don't like that it was a low second round pick. I think that they could have done better. And I know you're like, you can go look at the last 3 years, the wide receivers that get traded, and it's not first round picks and whatnot. But the quality of player being traded is not DK Metcalf. And I think that the Seahawks maybe went about this a little fast and could have negotiated with other teams and gotten a better draft pick out of it. I mean, that's my opinion, and I know people will be like, no, whatever, but honestly, he's a special player. He really is. And you're not replacing him with the 52nd overall pick. Guys of his caliber, if you look in the draft, are being taken in the middle of the first round.
However, not at $30 million a year.
No.
So that's the rub. It's like, it's DK. He's going to be 28 this year. He's entering into his third contract. He's expensive. It's a big commitment. It's probably a 4-year deal, in reality. And the production has been a question mark. I mean, I know what he is. I don't want to even talk about that part. It's just that number, the age coming up on, the physicality that he brings to the team, but also susceptible to injury as he gets a little older now, ages into this contract. I'm okay with the compensation, even if you factor in the 7th and 6th round swap, which even degrades this even a bit further. If you take a look at the overall value, it's a pick around 60 overall instead of 52. I'll take that. I wish there was maybe a player thrown in or a future, maybe a 4th next year or something like that to sweeten it. But it is what it is. You're right. They kind of rushed into it. I think Mike McDonald said, screw it. The guy doesn't want to be here. Let's find him a new home and let's move on. And we'll get people that want to be here and play in this system and for Mike McDonald. So
well, I know
I'm okay with it.
There was a report before all of this before he requested a trade, because other teams were apparently inquiring about trading for him. Green Bay, the quote was, had an offer on the table.
Yeah.
And
turned
so,
out not to be true.
Well, I think it turned out that it was, but it wasn't as good as what the Steelers were offering. And so they just, he's not going to Green Bay. He's going to Pittsburgh, which is smart. If you're going to take a player like that and you're going to trade him to the AFC.
Yeah.
Don't give him to someone that you're going to be competing with to try and get to the Super Bowl.
Jaden Daniels with Pickens and Metcalf. That's going to be fun for them. Okay. So the team also re-signed Ernest Jones to a new 3-year deal. Again,
that's
a
the
big win.
one.
Big win for the franchise. Big win
3
for
years,
John Schneider.
$33 million. That's a steal.
And $15 million of it is guaranteed. Like, that is a no-brainer.
That's a steal
for Seattle. No brainer.
You go look at the deals that, like, go look at what Patrick Queen got a year ago. And Jones is a better player and is signed for less. I mean, that's a steal. That's a fantastic contract. I love that. And he was so important to this team.
Yes.
And getting him back.
And Mike McDonald loves him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then Jaron Reed re-signed. 3-year, $22 million deal. Only $8 million guaranteed. The 2025 cap hit is $5 million. That's a great deal.
Yeah. And so they've got basically what you've got your starting defensive line set. You got your linebackers all set. You've got your defense from last year that was really good for the last 8 games, like top 3 defense over the last 8 games. That's returning. And you haven't even had the draft or, signed other guys to try and bolster depth or anything. So the defense, I think we know, is going to be good. It's now, what can we get out of the offense? The offense has so far to go now.
Well, and we've gone, the first day of, the legal tampering period of free agency here on Monday, without any offensive lineman being linked to Seattle in negotiations or anything. There's just radio silence out there. Darnold's our only outside free agent signing, which is a big deal, but you got to be able to protect him. He needs that protection. Dahlman signed with the Bears. The Bears are just going all out. I mean, they're in it and spending a lot of money on their offensive line this year to protect their quarterback asset.
They better.
and other guys are coming off the board. Whatever. I'm not too worried about it at this point. There's plenty of time left, obviously. And we'll see how that goes. The draft becomes very interesting now. Seattle, with its improved draft stock, has 118 overall. The 50th pick in the second round, the 52nd pick comes over from Pittsburgh. The 82nd pick in the third round is native. The 92nd pick from Las Vegas. That's 5 picks in the top 92 picks in this draft, which is very heavy in the middle of the draft. So rounds 2 and 3 going to be really important. And that still gives us an opportunity to move around a little bit. If Seattle doesn't like what they have at 18 and somebody wants to move up, they've got an opportunity to pick up a 6th day 2 pick. Or top 100 pick in this draft, and still get all the players that they want. So this is going to be a great opportunity to get young, inexpensive talent on this roster, both on offense and defense. We've still got the 137th pick in the 4th round, 5th round pick, a 6th round pick, as well as a 7th round pick, or 2 7th round picks, I think now, because we're going to get the Steelers. We're going to lose one of our 6th, but we'll have the comp pick that's coming back to us, which is 212 overall. So we've got 10 picks in the draft. 5 of those are top 92. Let's see. Is there anything else you want to talk about? I've just kind of refreshed my browser on the free agent signings, and Seattle still has not done anything. So nothing new to talk about during the show. I'm sure as soon as we click end, somebody will sign, and
always. So the picks that we've been talking about and mock drafting, do those include the 3 compensatory picks that Seattle's projected to get?
Yes.
Okay, because they're
I
expected.
just don't know the exact spot, the exact pick.
The projection is number 153, number 230, and number 347, which would be
okay.
late.
So right now, I think that 4th round pick is strictly a comp pick, and draft mock database, NFL draft mock database has that at 137. The 5th round pick, I believe, is a comp pick, and the 6th round pick, at least one of the 6th round picks, that I think 212 overall, is projected to be the comp pick. So there are 3 comp picks within that. The slotting hasn't taken place yet.
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll find out.
Yeah, so that's a lot of draft capital. That's really, Seahawks can do anything they want in the draft now, move up and down around, go get the players that they really want to come away from the draft with. That's really a good case scenario. I realize that you're now down Geno Smith, you're down DK Metcalf. That's how you got that extra draft capital. And there's no guarantees in the draft. I get that. But I think with Mike McDonald there and the way that we've been drafting lately, I think there's a real opportunity here to improve the roster and really find the players that are well suited for this team. And, when you have a new scheme and a new coach coming in that now looks like he's proven Mike McDonald to stick around, for a while, you really do afford the opportunity to kind of mold the team in his image and what he wants. And looks like they're going to be able to do that this year in spades.
Yeah. So the draft just becomes way more interesting with all of this because, there's a lot more picks near the top with guys that, we can do our research on and all of that. So it just gets more and more fun.
When we were doing mock drafts before, we had to trade back off 18 to pick up additional draft capital and so forth. Now, just without trading at all, we've got all the draft capital that we generated, before by trading back and moving off that 18th pick and so forth. Now you can kind of stick up there and pick best player available, or pick
what happens if, Shedeur Sanders drops and is suddenly sitting there at 10. Now you have the capital to move up and go get him if you want him.
Yeah, I think that is true. I think potentially the more likely scenario is Jackson Dart starts creeping up boards and getting closer to the 10th overall pick, as happens in drafts when the supply is lower than the demand. And it wouldn't surprise me if Seattle had to move up to like 12 if they wanted to get him or whatever. There's some time between now and the draft. I think these quarterbacks, Ewers and a couple other ones, Shuck, will tend to move up a little bit and get into the first round and get closer to pick 10 than they probably warrant. But I think that's the reality of how this thing goes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so fun. So, okay, so overall, what grade would you give the Darnold pick, Keith? Or the trade, or not the trade, but the acquisition of the player. Sorry.
Honestly, I would say let's just go with a B. It's not exciting. It's not entirely interesting. It's basically a lateral move, and they kicked the quarterback problem down the road for another year, and we'll see what happens then. But there is there's still work to be done there. That's still not a position of strength for Seahawks.
Would you feel the same if it was a Geno Smith extension?
Yeah.
And Geno remained on the roster for a similar number?
Honestly, yeah. Because I'm not as sold on Geno as you are, and
I'm in the same boat as you. Like, I support Geno. I think it was the right move at the right time for Seattle to do what they did, given the other circumstances around just franchise quarterbacks in the draft not being available to Seattle at certain spots. And, but at some point you had to move off of that. You know, you had to move forward. You were kind of stuck. You were, you know, being in the middle class in the NFL is the worst possible spot. And I think that's the danger of where we were at with Geno. I think the Sam Darnold thing, yes, it does kind of kick the can and it gives you another quarterback that's similar, but it's, you know, he's 7 years younger. And if it does work in this scheme, I think Darnold could end up being here for a while, which is the upside. And it wouldn't just necessarily be a bridge. It would be your franchise guy, albeit maybe not a top 10 quarterback in the league, maybe fringy top 10, right? But he's not going to be your, you know, top 5. And so he's not a guy by himself that can lead a team to a Super Bowl like some of the other franchise quarterbacks that are out there. But I do believe that he gives you an opportunity if you surround him with the right talent and have a top 5 defense, which we do. It does present an opportunity to kind of do what Minnesota did. You had mentioned a few different times throughout the year last year that you didn't think Minnesota's overall roster warranted the record that they had, but there they were at the end of the year at 14 wins. It's like,
yeah,
well, could Darnold if we solve the wide receiver room, if we solve the offensive line situation, is Darnold a quarterback that could get you to 12 or 13 wins and get you at least a couple wins in the playoffs? Potentially. Clearly. I mean, he didn't perform well this last year in the playoffs, but if you really take an honest look at the situation, it wasn't all his fault.
Nope.
So,
but I mean, it was, what did I say? He is a guy that, yes, you can win with. Minnesota proved that. You got to have stuff set up right around him. It's the same thing for Geno. Geno's not going to carry a team. He needs the right pieces around him. And you saw what last year when he didn't have the right pieces around him. The offense was terrible. It was just absolutely inefficient and
unworkable.
Yeah, it was just unworkably bad. And that's really what you're looking at with Sam Darnold unless you get the other pieces figured out. And so the Seahawks need to go figure out and get those other pieces figured out, because otherwise you're looking at a really long year. At least offensively, a really long year.
And that's why I think the hedge is opposite this year. I think the hedge isn't Sam Darnold. I think the hedge is drafting a quarterback and having that quarterback be in the system for a year behind Darnold so that they can move off of Darnold, just like Minnesota's doing with McCarthy there this year. I think I see the situation similarly.
In a sense, this whole situation is making Minnesota do the right thing. Because there was a lot of talk that they were going to bring Darnold back and, you know, possibly franchise him, which they chose not to do, but they're still trying to get him signed into a long contract and then maybe make McCarthy available via trade. And you go with the 21-year-old, I think. The guy with
That's
more
why
upside.
You drafted him top 10.
Yeah. So I think that it was Seattle made Minnesota do the right thing.
It's hard, Keith, to take a 14-win team and hand it to a quarterback that got an ACL early last year, didn't even play. So completely unproven commodity. It's hard to do that. I mean, that goes against every fiber of your being as a GM, as a head coach. You want to make sure you're handing the keys to the car to a player that can still lead your team at least as far as you went, and if not further than before. And so that's a big risk for them as well, as it will be for Seattle in 2026 if Seattle decides to move off of Darnold, which is the safe guy, and hand it to a rookie, essentially a rookie with no prior experience. It'll be it is what it is. I mean, you have to take those swings in the NFL if you're going to keep your franchise moving forward.
Yeah, at some point you have to. And so we'll see. We'll see.
All right, let's come back a little later this week, Keith, and get everyone updated on free agency. I'm sure there will be several moves to discuss by that time. And those are always fun. It's the roster building process is just interesting and strategic and never ending as far as how you can project and speculate and all that good stuff. So hopefully we'll have some concrete things to talk about.
And if we don't have anything to talk about, we will still have, draft position group stuff that we were started and have had to kind of take a break because all the stuff has been going down with the team. So, lots and lots of stuff to talk about.
Yep, for sure. All right. Find Keith on Blue Sky at Myers NFL. You can find me at NW Seahawk, the show Seahawks Playbook podcast on your favorite podcast platform and our YouTube channel. So until we see you again, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NW Seahawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.